So these are some of the elders from the reservation at Mille. Mille is another Ojibwe community in Minnesota. So this is some of the Jedi Council. And I was brought to a meeting there a few years before the pandemic. And Mille is an amazing community. I don't have time to give you a full history of that space, but suffice it to say, when you think about all the things that happened to our people, it's about as bad as it got. They navigated the treaty system, did not fight the US government, had most of their children taken and sent to residential boarding schools for generations. They started carving up inside of the reservation so white folk could own lands there. And they told the natives, you can only get your allotment if you move over 150 miles away to White Earth. And so they stayed in their territory landless. In the 1900s, the local sheriff came in and burned down all of the native houses and wigwams and said, you are homeless, go to White Earth. They were not allowed to have land parcels until 1926. By then, 2/3 of their population had moved to White Earth. In 1934, they established a new system in the United States. They used to have a white Indian agent on every single native community who ran the show. Finally, in 1934, within the living memory of some of our elders today, they recalled those guys and said, you can run your own show. But by then, they had been through so much that 3 white bankers ran the native businesses. And their territories were swallowed up by a sea of white resorts and farms and landowners, of course, claiming all the prime real estate. In spite of it all, when you go there today, some remarkable things have happened. You're probably familiar with the advent of casino gaming in the United States. And herein lies one of the kind of interesting sidebar things to be aware of, differences between the United States and Canada. In Canada, for both better and worse, the affirmations of sovereignty for First Nations often come through acts of Congress, whether it's the Indian Act trying to take it down, or it's recent legislation trying to affirm it, or even supposed to be engaging in, restorative justice practices. In the United States, it's a little bit less through acts of Congress and a lot more through the court system, where our sovereignty predates the existence of the United States, continued to exist through America's development. And as a result, in the US Constitution, there are defined federal powers, things only the federal government can do, like keep an army, but it also includes dealing with indigenous people. And most of people's lives in the United States, marriage, divorce, civil law, is a matter of state authority. And it becomes significant because if a state like Minnesota says gaming and gambling is illegal, except for pull tabs, Powerball, and church bingo, then those laws do not apply to native people. And tribes can establish casinos regardless of what the state or provincial laws would say. And so we don't have to ask for permission or get a new act of Congress in order to do something. We can just do it. That doesn't mean that the politics of that are simple. And there is pushback and resistance. Obviously, Donald Trump lives in the United States too. But in Mille, they were an early adopter of casino gaming. And herein are a couple of interesting distinctions. They were so impoverished. They had suffered so much through history. And the idea that there would be money coming into the community, people said, where's my peace? Any proceeds, I want my peace. And they met, and they talked, and they said, what would our ancestors have said? The ones who wanted their peace got moved to White Earth. Our ancestors said, we need water, land. our language and culture. And they said, you know, it's true. I will wait for my peace. They saved half of their money from gaming. Today, their tribal endowment produces more money than their casinos every year. They said, we are going to get involved with language revitalization. They put a fluent speaking elder in every classroom. They built a ceremonial dance hall for all of their ceremonial drums. They have 12 ceremonial drums. And on every Saturday night, when so many of our people are out looking for the next party, there are hundreds of tribal members in the dance hall in a sober, clean, safe, ceremonial space participating in their culture. It doesn't just provide an alternative as lip service. The investments in these things have been shaping the culture itself and incentivize people to participate in that as opposed to just me and my piece. I came to this meeting about 3 years ago, and they said, we have a pot of money, and we would like to do something serious about language revitalization. I was brought into the conversation because I'd been working with the development of immersion schools and things like that. And they said, we've been doing some things, but it is not enough. All of the colonization has had impacts. And they had identified 25 remaining fluent first speakers in that community. Most of them are in that picture. And they said, we want to get real. And I said, they're all over 70 years old. You're not going to send everybody back to college, get them a colonial teaching degree, and have them teach for you for another 30 years. You're going to have to do something else. I said, how about this? There are a lot of teaching tools, and I don't pretend that any one is going to be, the lightning bolt that saves it all. I think you're going to have to do a lot of different things. But you might have heard of Duolingo, Babbel, and Rosetta Stone. These are kind of teaching tools that use a combination of video, audio, talking flashcards, and artificial intelligence so they can correct pronunciation as you interact with an app, correct grammar as you interact with an app. I said, why don't we develop something like that? I know that our language has been an oral language, but there's a value to developing literary traditions. Let's publish some books. Let's build some schools and programs. So I had a whole list of things. And they looked around and they said, well, let's do all of it. They had, at that point in time, a $7 million investment for Rosetta Stone and $7 million for everything else they were talking about. In US dollars, that's real money. And there are questions that popped up, as you might imagine. Are you really going to trust a white-dominated colonial private business like Rosetta Stone to profiteer off of our colonization by selling a language product? And also, what's going to happen when the tribal election cycles are every 2 years and the next group of people are going to say, how come they're spending so much money on language? Let's spend it on something else. And they try to gut the effort when it's a multi-year effort. So we had to think carefully even about how we did the contract. So instead of letting Rosetta Stone profiteer off of our colonization, we said that the tribe will retain copyright to all content, that the tribe will collect all revenues for anything that is sold, and they will set the price points, that all materials can be repurposed any way that the tribe wants them to be used. So if somebody wants the raw recordings done with their grandma, then they can get those. We will prepay Rosetta Stone for their part of the service and contract with them for the technological supports and things like that. And by prepaying that, then Rosetta Stone will be paying the elders and curriculum developers and videographers and so forth. And everything we anticipated did happen. We put in punitive escape clauses so if someone would try to gut the contract, they wouldn't be able to claw the money out. Sure enough, there's an election. Someone says, how come they're spending so much money on language? Cancel the contract, give the money back, we're going to use it. And they couldn't do that. There have been lots of people who wanted the raw recordings of their grandparents and so forth, and were able to share it. The tribe charges $0 for their tribal members and a nominal fee of $40 for other Native people who want to access the product. Institutions, $100. Even with those low price points, they will recuperate their entire investment over the anticipated life of the product, and it will have cost them nothing. The work takes years. So year 1 of Rosetta Stone was released. It has a 500-page educator guide. So even if you hire an instructor who does not speak the language fluently, but is a good, higher level second language learner, they can pick up the instructional content and use the recordings and videos and so forth of the fluent speaking elders and everyone else, and they can actually be effective in teaching instead of just saying, Basic Nish Niswe Makwa Amik Muz. And so it's more productive. Year 2 has another 500-page educator guide. Year 3 has another one. And they will have a full 6-year development. They're about halfway through the production. A lot of times we think of language revitalization as, oh, that's good, another pretty bird sounding in the forest, and we love all the pretty birds, they should do that. I wish them well. Or it's especially wonderful if our pretty bird can be heard in our communities. But it's so much more. So often, we end up, every time there's a business operation, we want to build a new tribal house, we hire a Jaganash contractor to come build the house. All the money goes straight out the door to them. If we want to do, a book, we hire a white publishing house to go profit off the book. If we need a videographer, we hire a firm from off reserve to come and do that. The money just goes straight out the door. We pay the money to our people, they go straight to town and spend it at a Jaganash-owned car dealership. It is one way. In a healthy economy, $1 will circulate 9 times. So keep that in the back of your mind because I'm going to come back to it in a second. So as they got going, we had to teach our elders how to work through the pandemic by sending a grandkid and a computer to everyone's house. I remember one of the elders, the Lals, little old ladies in the middle of the pile there. I called her up and said, hey, it's time for our work session. Oh, tagij wagosh ingi wanenda an aja ambisi kan babise kawaga na tage wagamigong indija. Oh, well, no wajapi tain dagwad get in waving on na how anukida. So I called her up and she said, well, I got my coat on, I'm going to head to the casino. But, well, the language is more important. Let's work. So she took off her coat and we started working. And about 2-3 hours later, she goes, hatage wagamigong ni wiija. Imbabi ig wa wait da biwed. So I'm going to go to the casino now. My niece has been waiting in the car the whole time. But that's kind of how they were, like super dedicated. And we started working on some of the books too. We convinced the Minnesota Historical Society Press to publish the books, even though no one on their staff can speak Ojibwe or read it. We agreed to publish a lot of the books monolingually in Ojibwe because you need monolingual books for the immersion schools as well. As we got going, oh man, the pandemic was so hard. So in Mille Lacs, they had only 25 remaining fluent first speakers, and 6 of them passed away. Joe Naquanabe on the left side of the pile there with the buzz cut, he's a ceremonial drum chief and really respected elder. And he lost a brother and a sister to COVID. And I remember when we finally were coming out of it and we were able to celebrate, the books and Rosetta Stone and things like that. And Joe really kind of floored me. We asked him to speak. And I thought he would just say, this was just the toughest thing we've been through. And he said this, he said, you know, we've been through a lot. We have been through a lot the past few years, and we have been through a lot the past few hundred years. But I have to say, seeing all of these young people coming around, seeing what we have been able to build, knowing that our elders will be teaching people our language for hundreds of years to come, I have to say that this has been the happiest time of my life. And it is a powerful reminder that when we engage in language revitalization and cultural work and things like that, of course there is healing and hope for our young people, but there is healing and hope for our elders too. Miigwech for watching today. I'm Anton Treuer.